Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Jarrod. Kimber. With me is Behram. Quazi. We're going to be talking about the last few days in the cricket world. I don't know if anything's happened. Not sure. I'd have to check. But just in case anything has happened, we will try and cover it. Remember, if you're in the comments and you want to ask us anything, super chat is the best way to go. But you can also discuss things like Anwesh is in there and Keshuv is there as well. So feel free to come over. And remember, if you do like these podcasts, the best way to support us is by subscribing to the Jarrod Kimber podcast page. Eventually, that'll be the only place to watch them if you want to do them on YouTube anyway. They'll all be there. But thank you to everyone. Behram, let's start with the spirit of cricket. Mm-hmm. I may or may not have just slagged off a British Prime Minister about getting involved with cricket. And of course, because he doesn't know anything about cricket and he's a knob, he has decided to talk about the spirit of cricket. I've had a few direct messages from some very earnest people saying, Jarrod, you need to talk about the spirit of cricket and its role to be played here. You're a professional cricket person. Could you actually tell me what the spirit of cricket says?
Well, I mean, I think the spirit of cricket has always been so subjective. I mean, we've seen it being brought up when you talk about the Bankad, right? But I can name you a few instances where, England or Australia, one of those big guys weren't involved and, Pakistan was playing and none of this was even brought into question. And the two main ones that come to my mind is Quinton de Kock running Fakhar Zaman out. I think that was really, really poor and against the spirit of cricket. And he didn't, get reprimanded for it or something. And then also, if you go back all the way to 2006, when England were touring Pakistan, the Ashes winning team from 2005. I think it was 2005, actually, yes, late 2005. And Inzamam, was run out by Steve Harmison, who threw the ball at him, and Inzamam was just trying to save himself. And he got run out. And the next time, funnily enough, when that happened to Inzi, he blocked it and got out, obstructing the field. So I don't know why those two instances are just conveniently, brushed under the rug, because that's also poor spirit of cricket. In fact, that's more poor because it has trickery involved. And I think that's where the spirit of cricket comes into question, when there's some sort of trickery involved. Over here, Alex Carey.
But you say that most of the laws actually are there. It's very hard to trick the laws. So, for instance, if Alex Carey had held the ball and pretended like he was throwing it to a fielder, right, the umpire could have said, A, he felt like it was over anyway, or he could have thought that that something else was. I forget what the law is called. Sorry, I've forgotten that particular law from that point of view. But there are the trickeries, a lot of the trickeries anyway, like the one where you used to pretend that a fielder was throwing the ball in, or that you'd purposely misfielded, and all those things. There are actually laws that have been written about that, because the things that we can write laws about, we will write laws about. The people who are involved with the laws, people like Fraser Stuart, Johnny Singer used to be involved back in the old days as well. A lot of the former players in that, they are sent so many cases from club cricket, from professional cricket, all different levels of cricket about all this sort of stuff. So the other thing that I would add, so you talked about some of the interesting ones. We saw the Ireland cricket team run out Kagisa Rabada, right? When they knew that Kagisa Rabada thought it was a dead ball because it was a wicket, right? Now, the truth is that Rabada probably should have got into his crease in that situation. I would certainly don't ever stand in the middle of the wicket, would be my argument. And I certainly understand that side of it. But Ireland knew the reason he wasn't running back in was because he thought a wicket had gone. Now, the umpires made a mistake in this case. Rabada shouldn't have been given out LBW. He definitely shouldn't have been given out LBW. He shouldn't have been given out run out in this case, because the ball was already dead. But regardless of that, no one cared about it. It was barely spoken about. A lot of these incidents, and obviously it happens when the big three teams are involved, as you've already suggested, suddenly get blown all the way out of, all normal problems with the cricket, where these sorts of dismissals happen over and over and over again. Suddenly there's a big three nation involved, or in this case, two big three nations involved, and it's the biggest thing that's ever happened. What Ireland did was far worse than what Alex Carey did. In fact, Alex Carey didn't do anything wrong. But just to talk about the spirit of cricket for a moment, the issue with the spirit of cricket is, as you said, it is subjective. Your cricket background is Pakistan and Canada. My cricket background is Australia and England. There'll be other people who just play cricket in their local areas. No one can agree. And there's something really interesting at the bottom of the preamble. So the spirit of cricket preamble in the laws. I'm going to read this to you. Cricket is an exciting game that encourages leadership, friendship, and teamwork, which brings together people from different nationalities, cultures, and religions, especially played within the spirit of cricket. If these people have different nationalities, have different cultures, and different religions, we suddenly think that when they play cricket, they will all suddenly come together and have the same thought. The problem with the spirit of cricket is that there is no way that two people in the world can have the exact same theory on what the spirit of cricket should be. So here's my perfect example to you. I've been invited on every English broadcast in the world to talk about this at the moment. Everyone is so upset with the fact that Alex Carey did a legal dismissal of Johnny Bairstow. And yet we watched an entire session of cricket where all England did was bowl bouncers. And they didn't just bowl bouncers at top order players, did they? They bowled bouncers at an injured number 10 in Nathan Lyon, who could barely move. When I first learned about cricket, my dad was still going on and on about the fact that number 10 and 11 should never get bouncers bowled against them. And there was no law in the game that said that specifically. Throughout the history of cricket. There have been different laws that have come up later and playing conditions have come up. But there is no law that basically says you can't do it. It says you can't go over the top with it. There are things like that. You are allowed to try and hit Nathan Lyon with his dodgy calf in the head, and there is absolutely no problem with that. But you are not allowed to run someone out or stump someone when they have made an error leaving their crease. That is the absolute nonsense of the spirit of cricket. I'm going to take it one step further, Behram. Here we go. The spirit of cricket is basically a colonial holdover, right? When I was just on an interview and they were talking about, cricket is the gentleman's game. They don't mean you and me. Well, they might mean you. I don't know your full background.
Tell that to the Lord's members, right?
Yeah. It does not mean you and me when they say gentleman's game. What they mean is literally gentlemen was a class of people inside England who controlled cricket, right? Gentleman does not mean men, right? It doesn't mean all the people. And the reason it doesn't mean men is have a look at the famous cricket game that was played. It was called Gentlemen versus Players. Right? Gentlemen is about the top 1% of people controlling something, right? And then they have decided, like Chatham House rules, that there's this other special thing on top of everything else that only matters to them. The problem is that if you are not brought up in a village in Somerset, you're going to have a very different idea of this if you're playing in an Oval Maidan in Mumbai, right? If you're playing in Tangal, or if you're playing in Auckland. Even if you're playing in North Auckland to South Auckland, it's going to be different, right? The spirit of cricket is not a thing that we should be hanging our hat on. What we should be saying is the great thing about cricket is it has the ability for different people to play to their morals. If you want to walk, you are allowed to walk. If you don't want to walk, you don't have to walk. If you feel that was an icky dismissal, you can say, do you know what? I wasn't feeling that. I think we'll just let that guy play on, right? That is a fine part of cricket. But don't force your morals on anyone else, because the minute you do, A, you look like an idiot, and B, if you cannot explain what the spirit of cricket is in a way that would unify everyone who should believe in it, you're basically just talking shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, imposition in all its forms is bad, right? You take it with respect to spirit of cricket or religion or culture or whatever. Imposition is bad and everyone should just refrain from it. It's rather surprising that this is coming out the way it has, because we have precedent of Ben McCullum, running out Muralidharan in 2006 when he was going to congratulate Sangakkara after scoring his 100. I think you mentioned another incident when Zimbabwe was playing, which no one is talking about because Zimbabwe was playing, where Chris Mpofu was run out by Brendan McCullum again.
That one's worth mentioning, because it's really interesting that you talk about that, because he apologized to Kumar and Murali, who are two legends of the game, and Kumar was in front of him when he apologized, right? And remember, he's giving the Spirit of Cricket lecture, and he's got someone who's also given a Spirit of Cricket lecture in front of him, right, at that time. The reason that's important is he's never said anything to Mpofu, as far as I can tell, certainly not publicly, right? And if he wasn't giving a Spirit of Cricket lecture in front of Kumar Sangakkara, would he have apologized? Maybe privately one day. I don't know. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. Those were slightly different situations, although basically the same thing. The batter assumed the ball was dead when the ball wasn't dead, left the crease and was run out by McCullum. But the other thing is now that Ricky Wessels, the son of Kepler Wessels, I don't know why I said Wessels for one and Vessels for the other. I think it's Vessels. Kepler Wessels, isn't it? I think it's pronounced Vessels, and I should know this, but I could be wrong. Where's Neil Manthorpe when you need him? Anyway, I send all my South African pronunciation. I've got a different person for different pronunciations everywhere. But this game is
Well, if they
ridiculously
pronounce their
confusing.
V as fun de merve, then maybe you have a point. Maybe vessels is vessels.
Now
Who
you're
knows?
confusing me even more. But the point is that Ricky put out a tweet with an incident where Johnny Bairstow took the ball behind the stumps. He's waiting for the batter for, I don't know, second half, 2 seconds sort of thing. Certainly a lot longer than Alex Carey, who basically threw
Also,
his
sorry to
immediately.
interject, but how is this different from those sort of occasions where it's a spin bowler and the wicketkeeper literally waits for the batter to remove his leg from the crease and then they stump him? That's completely fine. But stumping someone off a pacer is wrong. That's ridiculous. And obviously, Australia picked up on this trend. They just didn't do this. You can tell by the reaction time of Alex Carey, right? You wrote in your piece, it was what, 0.87th of a second in which he threw back the ball. And I think the onus really falls on Johnny Bairstow. You know, the crease is there for a reason, and you need to make sure that you're still inside it or your foot is still inside it before the ball is dead. And it's really weird how Brendan McCullum has come out and said that Australia will live to regret this Johnny Bairstow decision and he won't be having a beer with him anytime soon. Ben Stokes is talking about, how he would have withdrawn the appeal. But yeah, I mean,
let me stop you on that, because we talked about this off air as well. I want to be really clear. It's really interesting that he didn't say we wouldn't run someone out or stump someone in this case. What he actually said was we would withdraw the appeal. So what he's saying is that Bairstow should have been given out, you should have taken the bails off, but then we would say, oh, we'll give him a warning or something, which is absolutely fine, except for the fact that Australia had watched Bairstow do this consistently. And I commentated for the last couple of years for SEN back in Australia and New Zealand on England Test matches. We talk about what Bairstow does all the time. It's something that is really, really common, that we have mentioned so many times, which is Bairstow can't stay in his crease. He is, I think we started calling him on SEN the constant gardener, right? He's always down the other end. And there are hilarious occasions. In fact, I'm not sure if it was the first innings of this game or the second innings, but I was watching with a friend and I said to them, look at this. He wants to talk to whoever the non-striker is. And the non-striker has no interest in this conversation and has literally turned their back on Bairstow. So now Bairstow's got to run back. It's a thing that he does quite a lot. So I think from that perspective, it's certainly, and someone asked me this question on Twitter, and so hopefully they're watching these videos and we'll be able to see it. But the other interesting thing about it is that they asked me if there are other people. There are the players who leave the crease a lot. And generally the players who leave the crease the most are the most careful, because it's a bit like I was, if you want to, for me, I bat out of my crease. So I'm very, very aware of where I am standing at all times, because I know I've started out of my crease. So I know even a simple play and miss for me, if I dawdle, there's a chance that, the keeper will take the bails off. And so players who garden a lot generally are the ones you'll have a look. They'll watch the ball go to the wicketkeeper and they'll watch it be thrown around. You can even take this further. Cheteshwar Pujara has a look all the way around the field. He watches the ball all the way around, which is probably a little bit too much. But yeah, there's a lot there. Let's have a couple more things just about this. The other one is that this happened at Lord's, right? Yeah. Which is hilarious. It's hilarious this happened at Lord's for so many different reasons. One is
classy Lords.
The Lord's members are upset. Well, aren't you the guys in charge of the laws? You had 200 years to fix these laws, NCC members. What have you been doing? Putting on your red trousers and tutting at people the whole time. You have plenty of chances to change this. You have plenty of chances for the spirit of cricket to be written the exact way you wanted it to be. We could all, snort 3 times before each ball if you wanted to change the laws in that sort of way, right? But the fact that happened at Lord's, and at Lord's, Behram, there is the WC
MCC?
WG Grace. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I've got so confused. At Lord's, there is the WG Grace gates, right? He has it. That's how big he is. The man has his own gates. Probably because you needed to open them to get him in by the end. There was quite a lot of man. It's hard to get WG Grace through a turnstile by the end.
Also, you needed a gate to kidnap that Australian cricketer, right?
Billy Midwinter. Yeah, exactly. WG Grace he was fielding at square leg in a test match. And I think it was 1882, I want to say. It's the it's the birthplace of the Ashes. WG Grace is out there at square leg. Sammy Jones gets a ball that hits him on the pad. It trickles out on the leg side. According to Sammy, he looks over at WG Grace and nods at him as if to say, I'm going to go down and do some gardening now. This ball's dead, right? He then walks back. He then walks down the ground to do that. WG Grace picks up the ball, goes up and runs him out, right?
Hmm.
He has gates at Lords. What are we talking about here? So
Yeah. Also,
yeah, sorry, go.
yeah, no. I just wanted to kind of paint a parallel with this incident and the Munkad. So, I mean, I just want to play devil's advocate over here. You know, a lot of people are on the fence with running someone out on the non-strikers, and it's a very hot topic in cricket. Whenever it happens, everyone just talks about it for 5 days. But the point over there is that there are incidents of other bowlers, you know, not running the batter out of the non-strikers and then giving warnings. West Indies was a very popular one, an outfit of the 80s who used to do this quite regularly. I know a lot of Pakistan fans will remind people of the time, I think Courtney Walsh refused to run Abdul Qadir out. So there is some precedent of
that would have
both
won
things
them
over there.
That would have won them a World Cup game, if I remember correctly.
Something like that, yeah.
It was a big game anyway.
It was a big game. But either way, you see both things happening over there. Over here, the batter left his crease, and I think that's just casual or lax attitude by Bairstow. Alex Carey was switched on, less than a second to throw the ball, and one could argue that he's been switched on ever since he fell in that Movenpick pool in Karachi. But I just find it hilarious that, you know, it's been being compared to the Munkad, because over there's a complex history where you have both sides. Over here, it's not so complex and it's fairly straightforward. It's not even a run out, it's a stumping, for crying out loud. So you're telling me that batters cannot get stumped off fast bowlers? That sounds a bit ridiculous to me. And I think the irony of it all is that Johnny Bairstow started off the test match carrying a protester off the field and ended it by getting stumped by a pacer. So
by having his own protest,
hilarious.
if you will. No, look, I think so. The whole thing with one thing that you will hear people say is he wasn't trying to get an advantage, right? Mm-hmm. We have seen 1,000 people play a shot off a spinner and have their foot slightly even on the crease, just not over it. They're not trying to get an advantage. In fact, sometimes they've finished playing their shot, right? As you said, you can overbalance later on, all these different things. Mancat is another perfect example of you not trying to get an advantage when you get run out. The creases are painted for it. These aren't accidental. These creases, Behram, didn't just happen by you know, it wasn't like some bird came and crapped on a line, right? These creases exist for a reason. And your job when the ball is live is to make sure that you are in one end or the other. Hopefully not both at the same end, because that can go very bad. And just to come to Roy's super chat, which I brought up ages ago and we somehow haven't gotten into yet. Roy says, and thank you very much, Roy, the spirit of cricket is a form of convenience as it changes time to time. This is the problem with this concept, right? Is people hide behind it when they're upset at something, and then they ignore it when they're on the other side.
Stuart Broad is a prime example of that. You know, edges one to first slip, that's fine. But this, apparently, what has happened to Bairstow is the worst thing he's ever seen on a cricket field, right?
Stuart Broad,
come on, give me a break.
Stuart Broad gets remembered for not walking right. And I don't mind that because I don't walk. I have absolutely no issue with that at all. And it was off the wicketkeeper's glove. Always, otherwise you're going to get absolutely slammed in the comments. But it did go to first slip eventually. But the point is, he also threw a ball at Wahab Riaz. No, it wasn't Wahab Riaz. It was the keeper, Zulkadir Haider.
Yeah.
He threw a ball at Haider, which I believe broke his fingers.
Oh, did it? I mean, there was
pretty
a lot
sure
of
go back and have a look.
Stuff that happened after that. I mean, he left a tour.
You talk about Alex Carey and from falling in that pool. Have a look at Haider's career after Stuart Broad hit him with a ball. Right. The point is that Stuart Broad has done far worse things on a cricket field than what Alex Carey has done, and the hypocrisy of that. It was a weird test match because there was a lot of things going on, and there's just one other thing I want to mention about the Stuart Broad angle of this, just because it's so funny. Is do you remember the time wasting incident? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
The shoe.
The shoe.
The shoe.
The shoe. Okay, so 2015 World Cup. It's in my Stuart Broad video. It's one of my favorite Stuart Broad moments. I was so excited to remember it. Yeah, they had bowled exactly what happened to Australia. They had to bowl a really long session in that first one, and a similar sort of thing happened where the bowlers got really, really tired and the batters got on top, and so they were like, "Well, we don't want to bowl any more overs than we have to, right? We want to finish this." And so Stuart Broad, going back, takes his shoe off, right, and like starts the time waste. Now, Stuart Broad, best time waster I've ever seen in cricket, best troll, best time waster. He's just forget great bowler, right? Forget funny batter, much better at time wasting and trolling. Pat Cummins does the exact same thing, and Stuart Broad is absolutely furious. This is something I do. I want to throw this person under the bus. I won't throw this person under the bus. What I say is that one person who knows a lot about these sorts of things, said to me that was a 5-run penalty. It should have been given a 5-run penalty. And it wasn't obviously given a 5-run penalty. And so from that, that is, I would say what Cummins did was a bigger cheating. I mean, there was no cheating now, the scary one. But even so, what Cummins did was actually cheating, because what he was thinking was, we don't want to bowl one extra over, so we're going to manufacture time wasting to make sure that we don't bowl that over. Right? No one cares about that. Now, I know a wicket wasn't there and all these sorts of things, and I understand why people don't care about it as much, but actual other things happen. What about the start catch? Tell me what you think about the start catch.
So when I saw the start catch live, I instantly, before they even sent it to the third umpire, I personally thought that, he's kind of used it to steady himself. And Ian Ward brought that up later on. I mean, people will obviously be polarized on this decision, and I guess a bit of bias comes in as well. I don't know if you heard Glenn McGrath on the comms, but he was having none of it, right? But you look at Mark Taylor, and he had a more balanced view, and he was kind of understanding where Murray Erasmus came from. But if you look at the way Stark completed his catch, I don't think he was in control of his body, and when he put the ball on the turf, he didn't have any fingers underneath the ball. Now, those are the things I look for in a clean catch, right? Fingers underneath the ball, and then obviously you need to be in control of the catch. So I don't think both of those things happen. In fact, when it happened, I was like, that looks not out to me. And when it did, when Maria Erasmus did declare it not out, I was actually quite happy. But you always feel like, there might be something to check over here. I probably need to look up the rule book and see, was it a catch? Was it not a catch? Because I'm, like you said, a professional working in cricket. I don't want to get this one wrong, right? I have a hunch based on my own knowledge, but I need to confirm it. And I think the explanations that I have read pretty much confirm it for me. I mean, I'm quite satisfied. I don't think it was a catch. And also, it's just, you see both sides of it, right? Like, the Ashes is such a competitive competition or series that, I mean, a lot of Australians were creating hue and cry over that. And similarly, you look at the English, and it's a simple stumping, and they're creating a lot of hue and cry over that. So you can see that tempers are flaring. And I mean, Andrew McDonald said that he's quite disappointed to listen to whatever Stokes and McCullum have had to say. But I can only imagine this to heat up this series even more. Yeah. And I mean, they might be telling each other in the in their change room that we're 2-0 up, lads. So what do we know? What do we know what's going on over there?
Just on the start catch. So I was on the right side of the press box. So I was almost directly behind Stark when it happened. And it happened in front of me. And what I thought was going to happen, I had a tweet ready to go, was I was positive he'd put the ball on the ground, right? And I thought what would happen is that he would, that Duckett would actually go off the field and that the umpires hadn't picked it up. So I thought they were checking for a no ball when they first stopped. And I thought they're going to miss an absolutely huge one here. And this definitely should have been out. Sorry, not out, I should say. But yeah, look, it's a litmus test. To go back to Roy's comment from before, I mean, he's right about how the spirit of cricket is a form of convenience and changes over time, from time to time. But the other thing is that, like, how many angry Australians were there that the start catch was given not out? And then how many angry English people were there that the Bairstow incident happened?
Ricky Ponting counts as 3 angry Australians, just to put it out there. Okay.
Well, Glenn McGrath, I think they put that clip out, and I was just like, what is he talking about? Yeah. We've literally seen an Australian player who's rolling over, put the ball on the ground. Like, it's so obvious that there's at least a gray area there. But it just shows you how people view these things. And, most of the personal abuse, most of the abuse I got was from, very, very angry English people abusing me for being Australian. And it's just like, look, I was pro Stuart Broad when his one happened. I was, I thought the start catch was not out. You can't suddenly accuse me of being Australian now because you're not happy with what's happening on. And I've been very clear, whether it be Mancads, whether it be any of the, even in the Rabada situation where Rabada shouldn't have been given out. I think if you go back and look at my video on the Rabada situation, I still said he should have got in the crease. I'm very consistent on this. If you think the ball is in play, get in the crease. If you're not sure if the ball is in play, get in the crease anyway, right? Just stay in there. And the last thing I wanted to mention was someone's just asked this. I think Samba just put a question up saying, is there any contemporary cricket captain who you think would have withdrawn the appeal? So obviously we had the situation, and I had this conversation.
Dhoni did this, right?
Well, Dhoni did.
Me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
And I think I might have been on with Steve Harmison and John
Mhm.
Norman on TalkSport, and we were talking about this. I think it was those two guys I was talking to about this. But we were talking about one of the interesting things about Dhoni was the one who took the bails off, right? And he was dead certain that Ian Bell should have been run out. And Ian Bell definitely should have been run out. Ian Bell made a huge error. You should, unless the umpire is showing that there's 4 runs, why would you ever just assume the ball's gone for 4? In any other situation, he could have been run out, and that would have been his own fault. Because it was T and he ran off the ground, it was a bit like the end of the over part of this here, where it was like, oh, it's a bit more confusing. It's not confusing. You wait for the umpire to call T, or you wait for the ball to go into the rope, and you've seen it go into the rope, and you've seen the umpire give it as 4. But the interesting thing about that was because there was a break, right? Dhoni had a chance after 5 or 10 minutes. And, I think it was Annie Flower and Andrew Strauss. I think Andrew Strauss was the captain at the time, who went in there and they talked to him and Duncan Fletcher. And they had a good chat. And by that stage, Dhoni wasn't pumping anymore. Do you know what I mean? The moment had gone. That is when it makes a lot more sense. And I think there's been a couple of occasions like this. There's the famous run out with Dean Jones, where Dean Jones gets bowled off a no ball, thinks he's out, so he starts to leave the ground, and then the West Indians pick up the ball and run him out. Right? Again, shouldn't have been given out. The umpires got that one incorrect. But the point is that at the end of the day, I think some of the West Indians were a bit like, yeah, we kind of knew you probably shouldn't have been out then. But at the time, they were just happy to get rid of a batter. So there is a little thing of, and even if you look at the McCullum situation, right? 10 years later, he had regret.
Yeah. Maybe in 2033, when Pat Cummins is giving a lecture at Lords or something, we see an apology from him too, but I doubt it. Yeah. Because in his presser, he said that Johnny does this all the time. So they know that Bairstow, is like that. He attempts these sort of things. And I mean, I think Scotty Styrus tweeted, right, that there should be no disparity. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but there should be no disparity between the laws of the game and the spirit of the game. And I think that is the most simplest way to put it. And if these guys, the MCC members, are writing the rules, they are not allowed to be the ones who are being loud about it.
Laws. I'm not going to let you say rules on here. Of all the podcasts,
right. Sorry, laws.
Especially, we'll have Barrett commenting and coming up. Coming up next, we will talk about the actual cricket, because some cricket was played. But you're watching Uncovered with Jarrod and Behram. If you follow my work, you'll be very tired because I produce a metric ass ton of content, and I can't do all of that myself. I also can't afford an army of people to do it for me. So what I needed was a solution to get all my analysis, hot takes, and random asides out on social media. And I found that with Memento, the AI tool that basically takes all of my work and cuts it up, makes it look pretty, and pushes it all over the internet. If you have content and you need to repackage it, use Memento. Welcome back to Uncovered, Jarrod and Behram. Let's talk some cricket. So what have we got? The Ben Stokes innings was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've talked about the technical aspect of it, but there's also just the pure hitting that he manages to do. It's he's such a captivating player to watch live. I was there in 2019. I was there at Headingley. I've seen this one. But once he starts to hit the ball, there's a real like, I've forgotten the guy's name. Who's the guy that tries to kill everyone in the Marvel Avengers? The guy with the clicky fingers. But there's a real inevitability. The big Thanos, the big purple dude.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
My kids have started watching Harry Potter again and Star Wars again lately. So unfortunately, my Marvel knowledge has slipped a little bit. But yeah, there's a real inevitability of it. And you watch the way that Australia was playing. I just thought Stokes was absolutely marvelous. And I do think there are technical reasons why he's so good in these innings, which, you can have a look in one of our other videos that we put up. And I'll probably do a whole piece on it one day because I've always been really fascinated on it. But he's not like a normal batter, which in most cases limits him as a player. But in those sorts of environments actually brings out the most in him. And I think, his best case scenario is it being 7 down with like 150 runs to get on a pitch that's playing up a little bit. He's actually probably a better player then than he is coming in at 3 for 250 on a normal wicket.
Yeah, and I mean, if the word clutch was a cricketer, Ben Stokes would be that cricketer. I mean, that's just how clutch he is. And Every time England are under pressure, he soaks it in. And you have like tons of examples now. You've got the 2019 Cricket World Cup final, the very recently concluded T20 World Cup final
Yeah.
versus Pakistan. You've got Headingley 2019, and now you have Lords 2023. And this one in particular, I think it was rather impressive. And I'm just going off of your piece because you have all of these keen observations. But the way he targeted one side of the ground, hit with the wind, not against it, and targeted that short boundary from one end, I think that was super smart cricket. And it's just that I feel like he just turns on whenever the chips are down, and that's what makes him such a special cricketer and such a fan favorite. Like for me as a spectator, I would pay top dollar to watch Ben Stokes do his thing in these sort of situations. In fact, I would have loved it had he taken England over the line. But ultimately, I think if you look at the whole game, when England batted first in their first innings and were rolled over for 325, I think after they were 188 for the loss of one wicket, they were a touch too careless versus the short stuff. That was obviously a main feature in this test match. And had they just, played with a bit more brains versus all that, those short deliveries, I think they could have gotten at least 50 to 60 runs at the minimum. And hey, they lost by 45. So I think that's where they lost it. That's where Baz ball became a bit stupid. And I'm all for attacking cricket, funky fields, disturbing bowlers' rhythm and line and length. But you can't just go out hoiking at every short ball. You've got to leave some. And, well, Ben Duckett played a brilliant game, 98 and 83, got out to the short one twice. And his name is Duckett. He's supposed to duck it, but he doesn't.
To be fair, also, he probably gave a few chances against the short ball as well. And also back of a length ball. He had a bit of a, I thought he batted really well, but there was also, a lot of luck from that. So the whole bouncers thing, we're obviously going to do a whole episode on that. So stay tuned to Jarrod Kimber podcast channel. That's where the podcast will be about it, but I'll also be doing a video on it if I ever get time to finish the video. I think it's a really, really interesting one. The one thing I would say, you talked about the attacking, and I think I was sitting next to Derek Pringle, and I think he might have written this in one of his pieces, but I know he said it to me, and I saw him write the note down. He was very, very pleased with himself. He said that England are playing cricket without context at the moment, and there's a freedom in that, right? The freedom is just go out, do your thing. There'll still be a cigar and a glass of whiskey for you at the end of the day's play, regardless, right? There is a real freedom with that. But there have been times in this series when they should have done better as a team, and they haven't because they are not playing to the situation. And that doesn't...
Stokes' innings is an example of that because he played different phases, right?
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
They should have done in the first innings.
And so Stokes, a perfect example of that is the Stokes first innings one, when they're collapsing and everyone's playing pulls and hooks, and Stokes just plays the short ball with a straight bat and ducks them, and occasionally plays another kind of more attacking shot when he's completely in control of it. If he can do that, why can't everyone? And as I've said from the start, and I think I might have written about this over the weekend as well, is that McCullum did not attack every ball. It's nonsense to think that McCullum was always in attack mode. It's not how he played his cricket. When he attacked, he went all in more than other people, but he didn't always attack. And I think that's a really, really important thing. Steve Smith, did you have anything about Steve Smith?
I think Steve Smith was the glue that held Australia together in that first innings. I mean, there were a bunch of positives for Australia. Like David Warner got runs. Yeah. Travis Head and Usman Khawaja both continue to get runs for Australia, which is a very welcome sign. Man has got a start. I mean, he's not had the best of English summers thus far, but at least he got a start. Lots of positives. And yeah, Smith is just that eternal glue that holds everything together. And he too, is not someone who just has one gear. He has multiple gears. I remember when he came out to bat, he scored 25 off 20, something along those lines. And he got to his 50 off 105 or something deliveries. So he is one to soak in the pressure and play according to the situation. And he knows the demands of the longest format. And there's a reason why he's considered the best after Bradman. Guy nearly averages 60 with the bat in Test cricket, and England is one of his favorite places to play. So I'm not particularly surprised. What I want to ask you is, Nathan Lyon's gone. He's not going to be part of this Ashes anymore, and he had played 100 consecutive Test matches, and he has been Australia's go-to spinner ever since Warne retired. They tried a few spinners in between, but none of that worked. So how much will this impact Australia? Because you've got Todd Murphy, but he doesn't have a lot of experience and he's only bowled on those Indian surfaces. This will be a different challenge.
Yeah, I was actually just looking up a stat online. I wanted to see how many times he had taken over 40 wickets in a Test match here, but I think Oh no, yeah, it's 4 times, I think. 5 times? 5 times.
Hmm.
He's taken over 40 wickets in a calendar test match year. And I'd be interested to see how many guys have ever done that. A lot of that is just how many test matches Australia play, of course. But regardless, it's a lot to do. The Todd Murphy part of it is really, really interesting because I think I saw Nathan Lyon when he first came through. I remember seeing him in those first Big Bash games through to, being at maybe covering his first test and certainly being at a lot of his first innings. I think Todd Murphy, from what I've seen of him, it looks like a better bowler than Nathan Lyon is at a similar mark in their career. Doesn't mean he'll end up being there. Nathan Lyon's obviously had a fantastic career, but I do think Todd Murphy might be better. However, he played in India, as you said, very different to what he's going to be up against here. He's played a little bit of T20 cricket, so he's used to being bashed around a little bit, pardon the pun. And he will have played on flatter wickets that won't have helped his spin. But generally, in those wickets, he would have had to bowl over spin because he's an Australian spinner. Going up against the England style of play, and they're going to be, you would assume they're only going to come harder in this test match than they've come at any other stage. It's a really, really interesting one for him. I think since Lyon, and maybe even including Lyon, of all the bowlers I've seen, spinners come through Australia, he's the only one where I think he has a chance in this situation. So if anyone else was, as young as him and as inexperienced as him, I would think that this would be a huge, huge issue and we might never see them again. I don't feel that is quite the way for him. That doesn't mean he'll have a good test match or a good rest of the series if he plays throughout the rest of the series. But I do think that I think he's very composed and he's very smart and he's very talented. He's got enough confidence in his own ability. He was willing to take on, the Indian players in those situations. This is very different, but I do think that there's something there. And I also think, most importantly, perhaps for this particular thing, that he's an all-surface bowler, in a way that, Kuhnemann, for instance, if Kuhnemann never played outside of Asia, wouldn't massively surprise me, and I think that would be fine. Whereas I think Todd Murphy is the next Nathan Lyon in that he can play in all situations. So as far as having I've been thinking about this a lot, the only better replacement that anyone has, maybe you would say Folkes and Butler as replacements for Bairstow. You would say Akshar Patel for Jadeja. There's probably a couple with the South African seam bowlers where they've got, a couple of other guys out there. And there's, Will Young is maybe another one as well. I would say that this is one of the best replacements you could have. If you're going to have an injury, Todd Murphy coming in for Nathan Lyon is the best case scenario. It's not like Jack Leach is injured, we need to pull someone off the bench, right? Who's that bloke who was in the IPL? It's not like that. So I do think from that perspective, it's a really, really good thing. However, he's still a kid playing in this, and it's going to be very tough. The one last thing from this game that I know you wanted to talk about was the Stark ball to Ollie Pope, which was absolutely incredible. It was so funny watching England bowl like with pancakes into the pitch for like 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it was. And then Mitchell Stark's like, guys, have you tried massive in swingers onto the top of middle stump? Because this also works.
Well, that was, I think calling it a massive in swinger is actually an understatement. That was just one of the best bowls that Stark has ever bowled. I know people talk about that Vince ball from the Australian Ashes a few Ashes back, but that hit a massive crack. There were no cracks over here. And just if you look at the trajectory of the ball and the way it, outdid Ollie Pope, I reckon like 3 to 4 generations of Ollie Pope will not be able to put a bat on ball. That's just how good it was. And I think it's
if you put Ollie Popes from the crease all the way down to halfway, they all would have been defeated.
If the actual Pope throws like holy water on them, I think they'll still be defeated. So
still wouldn't stop it. If you have a look at the footage, and I know the cameras are never quite straight on, but you could see the ball go outside off stump before coming back. And sometimes that's an optical illusion you watch with left arm seam bowlers because of the way they swing it. Sometimes it looks like that. There's another one that Stark bowled recently, and I thought it had done the same thing. And then when I look back, I was like, oh no, it hasn't. Actually, it's the Hawkeye showed it. I haven't seen the Hawkeye of that ball, so maybe I'm wrong. But it looked definitely in this case like it went at least 2 off stump, if not outside off stump. And then a little bit like the Magic Luigi from the Seinfeld episode, then just came around back to bowl him. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I'm probably going to tweet this later, but I want to start a petition to rename Hawkeye as Bird Umpire. So if anyone's watching this, please, throw some weight behind that. But anyway, so yeah, the Stark dismissal was amazing. And you got like the main takeaway over here is that the three best deliveries, all Ashes, have been bowled by Australians. You think about that Cummins Yorker to Ollie Pope. And that was like, that's a close second, I'd say. The Stark one just, edges it for me. And then you've also got that top of off bowl that, oh well, he does it all the time. Pat Cummins in top of off is like a match made in heaven. But the way he got Harry Brook out was just, I think that was a statement from Australia. And yeah, I mean, barring maybe Josh Hazelwood, who did get some wickets off the short delivery, I think Stark and Cummins have found their rhythm in England. You have a case for Boland for Hazelwood at Headingley. I think that is definitely a
I think they
conversation that
might
needs to
rest
be had.
Hazelwood anyway, just based on how he's bowled in these series. Just say to it, because he was never supposed to play all 5 tests anyway. I think he was aiming to play 3. He's played 2 in a row. He doesn't look in great rhythm to me. I don't think he bowled terribly at times. Actually, it's the best I've seen him sort of bowl the short ball, maybe because he had so much practice at it. But it's
You also
best.
have to give Alex Carey props for that, where he was standing for that Duckett dismissal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Duckett usually plays this swivel pull sort of thing, which is safer. But on that occasion, he didn't. He went more expansive and it got the better of him. But I just think Australia's bowling attack is miles ahead of England's because you look at them and they don't have an enforcer. Josh Tongue was their enforcer and he did a decent job. But, the military medium militia just bowling those bounces, it's quite sad when you look at it. It's quite sad when you look at James Anderson.
It's really annoying that you said that military medium militia, because I wrote that line.
Yeah, I know.
And I could not say it on camera. In fact, I've just said it now, so it's actually annoying me. I reckon I did that take 7 times, and I was very close to throwing my phone off the Lord's balcony on stage. I could not get military medium militia, and I was so proud of that line. I was like, nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah,
Josh Tongue.
It was that line and the Danny DeVito line. I think that's where you were really at your best.
That. Yeah. Josh Tongue actually broke a stump in this one as well. He not. I don't. Who was it? When he bowled Warner, he knocked the top off a stump. I'm just saying because usually we get really excited about that, but I don't think anyone noticed because it looked like a bail. But if you go back and have a look, the top of the stump just exploded.
Yeah, so I think Australia's bowling is way better placed than England's, and England will have to bring in Mark Wood, I guess, for Ollie Robinson, because Ollie Robinson is averaging less than 80 miles per hour when he's bowling in these 2 tests, and both Anderson and Ollie have come off of injuries. But here's the interesting one. You probably want to play James Anderson at Old Trafford, so do you rest him at Headingley? I don't know what will happen. I know Moeen will come back because that's what they're suggesting. His finger is healed and all of that. But this is a problem. It's a massive problem going forward for England in the Ashes. And also, Jarrod, I just think that both teams just miss so many opportunities. I've lost count of the number of catches dropped. I think there have been 4 dismissals this English summer off no balls, 2 in this game, Cameron Green and Ben Stokes, that ultimately you just have to think that the team which made lesser errors won, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a little bit messy so far. You're listening to Uncovered. That was Behram, or you can find him as Def Mango on Twitter. I'm Jarrod Kimber. You can find me wherever you need me. Really, I'm probably behind the bin. We're going to take a quick break here, and then after the break, we'll be back to talk about the World Cup qualifiers. If you like what we are making here and you want to know if you can help out, well, you can. On top of asking super chats on our lives, you can also support us through Patreon or buy me a coffee. The more support we can get, the better and more videos we can make. On Patreon, there are plenty of other things we offer too, like a Discord server, the chance to ask questions directly, AMAs, and early versions of our recordings. This channel only exists because people like you help support it. We have to buy equipment, software, pay wages, and my mortgage, I suppose, just to make this stuff happen. And if you don't have any money available to spend, it isn't just your money we want. Shares, likes, retweets, comments, subscriptions, the little bell icon thing, all of it. They help us build and become more professional, make more videos, better videos, all that sort of stuff. So thank you for watching everything we make and for all your support so far. Uncovered with Jarrod and Behram. I suppose if we're going to talk World Cup qualifiers, next week on the episode, we'll probably talk about the teams who have made it and not quite made it. There's plenty of good stuff to talk about, but you can't really go past the West Indies. I'm going to say, I know what the average cricket fan is going to think, where they're going to think this is an absolutely terrible moment for West Indies cricket. I think this is actually what needs to happen to cricket nations. I think they need to fail on this level so that things change. Jimmy Adams, who I don't know if I've ever had him on my podcast. I don't think I have, but I've talked to Jimmy quite a few times. I think they were moving in many good directions. Their talent pool isn't as strong as it has been at other times. That's absolutely true. But I think one thing that West Indies cricket really desperately needed was the losing some games and missing out on a tournament so that they know exactly where they are. They got lucky 5 years ago. I don't think that's improved their cricket over the last 5 years. They still have talented players coming through. I like Jaden Seals.
Kyle Mayers.
Kyle Mayers is a marvel. Little Chanderpaul, all these different players coming through. There's talent hasn't stopped there. Cricket isn't going to end because of how poor they've been in this tournament. But I do think this is what is supposed to happen. You are supposed to, in sport, you are supposed to know what it's like to not qualify so that everyone pulls together to make sure that doesn't happen again. And the problem with cricket for so long is we've had so many teams who have been very bad for long periods of time just because it doesn't matter as much. I'm hoping now it matters a little bit more. But I'm sure most casual fans don't want to hear any of this. And what they really just want to hear is this the end for West Indies cricket?
Yeah, I mean, Darren Sammy alluded to much of what you said, right? He said that when you hit rock bottom, there's only one direction where you can go. But he said that after the Netherlands game, and then they lost to Scotland. So I do
A
feel
new rock
sorry for
bottom.
the West Indies. Yeah, I really do. I'm a big fan of their cricket. I think everyone enjoys watching them play just because of their brand and, the way they just come out and attack and stuff like that. But look, this is not something new. West Indies Cricket Board has been, the center of a lot of problems for a long time now. There's, of course, the lack of funding, and you can talk about that players aren't paid as well as, their franchises pay them. So there's that bit of problem over there with the, just freelancing, and people call them mercenaries at that point, but I don't like that word. And I mean, West Indies cricket had a severe lack of cohesion. You'd always hear about these problems that are going on with the board and the players, and of course, the lack of funds. Relationships were not maintained, and your best players were not retained. I mean, Jarrod, Evan Lewis, who I thought was the heir to Chris Gale's throne, has not played an ODI or List A game since July 2021. This is Evan Lewis. He should be playing every game for the West Indies. I know he's had some issues with fitness and stuff like that.
But the issue is that there's always a problem with one of these players. And they at times they decided that was going to be all about fitness, right? So when I was in the CPL, that was a big thing. And I remember them saying, every one of your players in the CPL must be fit enough to play for the West Indies, which was tricky for us because we had Raheem Cornwall, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I didn't even know what Raheem Cornwall needed. Does he just need to be able to hit pump sixes and bowl 4 overs of off spin, or does he need a different kind of fitness? But they do that, but then that means that Andre Russell's like, well, wait a minute, I can't move in the field, and Sunil Narayan doesn't move very well, and there's always seems to be an issue with all their players and the way they fit together. Leadership is an issue. Kieran Pollard, got the job, but his knees are on the way out. Nicholas Purran got the job, but probably isn't very smart young man, but probably isn't a natural leader, right?
Definitely
there's just so many issues on everywhere you go. I mean, I heard Ricky Ponting the other day say, West Indies cricket just needs to invest more money. The problem is, if West Indies cricket was a nation, right?
Yeah.
That nation would invest more money. If you're Jamaica, maybe Jamaica's the wrong one, Trinidad, which I think is doing pretty well economically at the moment, at least last time I checked it. Yeah, unless I've missed something massive, and I apologize to all my Trini friends. But my memory was that they were doing pretty well. If they invested a bunch of money in West Indies cricket, right? They're only going to get a certain amount of players in the West Indies side. And the majority of those players are going to go off and play franchise cricket now anyway, right? Yeah. Where is the incentive even for the nations to do that? And then, of course, even if one nation does it, is that enough? Is Trini suddenly pumping $3 million in a year to develop players enough to change all West Indies cricket? Probably not.
Yeah. Also, like, you need list A competitions. I am always crying, in Pakistan regarding this, that you have one list A competition all year, and you're supposed to produce ODI cricketers from that. You need to have a consistent season. And West Indies domestic cricket is not really a thing anymore. I know it exists, but everyone's looking for a franchise gig. And I don't blame these guys, because that's just the financial structure that exists for them now. Yeah. You talking about them not being one nation also is a big factor in this, because you need all of these countries now to come, on the same page. And well, even if we, look past all of these things, West Indies, of course, it aches my heart too that they won't be part of this World Cup. And you can also make an argument that 10-team World Cups are just not fair. But if you're losing to Zimbabwe, Scotland, and the Netherlands, you don't deserve to be at the World Cup, right?
Well, if you lose to Zimbabwe, I think that's probably fair. But if you're losing to
Yeah.
Scotland and Netherlands and they're not picking their best teams, then
If you cannot defend 375 versus a Netherlands team, which is not featuring Fred Klaassen, Van Meekeren, who else am I missing? Roloff van der Merwe, Colin Ackerman. These were the stars of that game in which they defeated South Africa not too long ago in that T20. I mean, kudos to the Netherlands. Of course, they've had some fantastic performance in Basteleda and
look, Netherlands still have talent. But the point is that you're making is that you know, the level of Netherlands cricket just below the bit we see is nowhere near as strong as anything in the West Indies, right? Barbados school cricket is stronger.
Didn't Nicholas Pooran's team play a stronger Netherlands not too long ago and win against them? So, I mean, there's
in the Netherlands, wasn't it?
I think so, because
actually, I'm not sure it was stronger. I think it might have been another team where they didn't have all their best players. But your point is there. We've actually had a super chat about this. Raghav says, out of Zimbabwe, Scotland, and the Netherlands, who do you think will perform better on Indian pitches in the World Cup? They'll most likely play Hyderabad twice, Lucknow twice, Dharamsala, Delhi, Kolkata, Pune, and Bangalore. So Zimbabwe have two decent. Well, they have one very good spinner in Ryan Burl. I'd say then Sikandar Raza is.
He's all right.
Like part-time plus
variation,
maybe the best way of putting. Yeah, and then exactly. And then they've got obviously a couple of other batters who can bowl a little bit of spin. Scotland have two very good spinners. Unfortunately for Scotland, they both have to be left-arm figure spinners, and so if they go up against a team with too many left-handers, they just don't feel comfortable. Even though Mark Watt's a very non-traditional left-arm finger spinner, they have not felt comfortable playing them. Yeah, I could say this as the former analyst. That was the conversation we always had. It was, do we do this or do we not? But yeah, they're not.
I'll throw one in over there. Netherlands have a leg spinner who I just saw and was very impressed with. Saqib Zulfikar, I think that's his name. Bowls a flatter trajectory, does not give the batter any room. And I think if let's say they make it to India 2023, which I don't see happening, I think Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe are probably the two favorite teams to make it. But if they somehow make it, I think this kid is very, very talented. And I was really impressed by the way he was bowling in another game. I think it was the Sri Lanka game, which Netherlands nearly won. Now, had they won that game, that would have made things really interesting.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, I think the talent pool is quite good because considering they don't have so many players at their disposal because of county cricket, commitments, I think they've done really well. They've over-exceeded their expectations.
Definitely. The only other thing I would say about these three teams is, so we talked about the spinners. I still think Zimbabwe has the best all-round. I mean, Zimbabwe had Brandon Mavuta, who's not even probably going to play. And it's the second time today I've been on a podcast.
They've got Wesley Madhevere as well. He's a very handy cricketer.
That's what I mean. They've got so many options. But the most important thing, I think, is the batting. Scotland have Callum McLeod. I'm trying to think. Netherlands will have Colin Ackerman. So there's a couple of guys that can play spin. But Zimbabweans grow up on pitches that spin a lot. Doesn't mean they're always necessarily good at playing spin, as we've certainly seen a few countries over the while that have got spinning conditions and don't always play it as well. But the point is that in Scotland and Netherlands, that is not as much the case, right? The Zimbabwean pitches, if you look at the old CricViz numbers, they used to have the second most spin in the world behind Sri Lanka. I'm not sure that's still the case, but certainly in this tournament, we've seen a lot of spin again. So I would think of those three teams, Zimbabwe would be the one. I think Zimbabwe is just the best team, but also if you're talking conditions based, I think they're the best option there. But thank you very much, Raghav, for your super chat. I've got one more note here, and I don't know what it means. And I know I was talking to you when I took this note, but I've got West Indies, Netherlands, and then something here that says player. Do you know what? Was there another team we were going to talk about?
Maybe you were wanting to talk about how in the Super Over, the West Indies gave the ball to Jason Holder, who wasn't even impressive in the IPL, and they had Alzari Joseph, who had bowled a very decent last over in the 50 overs that they bowled. Now, I don't know, maybe there's a rule that if you're bowling the last over of a regular game, you can't bowl the Super Over, but that just, it blew my mind. Also, they didn't have Nicholas
You said that
Pooran
blew your mind.
available.
Was that the stupidest thing they did? Didn't Shai Hope bat in the Super Over?
He also batted in the Super Over. And I mean, sure, I get it. Nicholas Pooran can't come out because he wasn't on the field. But really? Shai Hope? Is that the guy you're going with? I mean, I get it. Captains taking responsibility, leaders leading from the front. But come on, use some common sense. You had a strike rate of 60 not too long ago. You've upped that. I'll give Shai Hope that. but it's just a tactical blunder of enormous proportions.
So we talked about West Indies. We talked about Netherlands. Is there another team that you wanted to talk about? I'm just trying to read my note. I have no idea what it says. It looks like I've made up a word. I'm just going to spell it out to you. This is how weird it is. It's Payyer.
Payyer. I don't know. That sounds like a South African name, but I mean, I guess I can add a bit more on the West Indies. We've talked about the non-cricketing aspect of things, but if you really look at the cricketing aspect of things, they were the worst fielding team in the entire World Cup qualifiers, and that has got to come in, you've got to pay for those dues at some point. And also their batters, minus Pooran and Brandon King, those guys who got some runs, they all got starts. None of them kicked on. Now, I don't know what your word means, but I think that's all I have in my notes.
That's the end of Uncovered, because I'm never going to be able to work out this note. I don't understand what it means.
I don't know why Dane Pite is coming into my mind.
Dane
with
Pete?
The spellings that Pete, sorry.
No, it's got a bit of Dan Pete to it. I see that. I'm trying to think if I've had Dane on the podcast before. I did commentary with Dane Pete for the minor league cricket. Lovely guy. I think he's got his own podcast now. Dane Pete, he's got a podcast on USA Cricket. So if you remember Dane Pete, he was the South African off spinner. I'm sure if you put his podcast, if you put Dane Pete's name and podcast into YouTube or wherever you find your places, you'll be able to find it. I should know the name of it. I think it's called the Great Big American Cricket Podcast or something like that. Sorry, Dane, this is the worst promotion you're ever going to get for your podcast. But just a big thanks to everyone. There's some great comments coming through. We went well fast how much we were supposed to be talking about anyway on this podcast, as we often do. But just a huge thanks. Remember, you can find Behram on Twitter at DefMango or at Grassroots Cricket. You can find me absolutely everywhere you need me, and we will see you again next time. Let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, people would ask my dad if he wanted me to be Viv Richards, and he always said no. He wanted me to be Boycott, because apparently he liked boring things. But anyway, it turned out I could be neither. But thanks to Bodyline t-shirts, I can wear clothes showing both players. The Boycott Stick of Rhubarb is one of my favorite t-shirts. I really like the design. And it's not the only one I love. There's also a WG Grace one where he's in a pedalo, which is a part of my everyday wardrobe now. But there are heaps of other cool shirts on this site, and you can search for them by nations or type, and they seem to add to them all the time. I'm a big fan of the Court Marsh Bold Lily in the Australian collection, and there's also a lovely Morning Everyone in honour of Richie Benaud's great greeting. The English area has the Fast Leg Theory shirt, which I think is a ripper. There's a couple of great West Indian ones I love, including this simple Viv Richards design, and a couple of Capel Dev t-shirts in the Indian section that I simply must have. I'm not saying that Bodyline t-shirts will have something that you will like, but I will say this: they got me to wear a Jeffrey Boycott inspired t-shirt.